Hello, how are you? I am sorry for getting started so late. I had some technical difficulties, but I'm really glad to see you. We've had a really great time over the last 3 days reading some chapters from
Hello,
Sideways
how
From
are
Wayside
you?
School. And
I
now
am
we're getting ready
sorry
to
for
go
getting
ahead
started
and
so
read the
late. I
finale,
had
get
some
finished with the
technical
whole book.
difficulties,
I'm really
but
just doing this just so that we have a
we've
chance
had a really great time over
to
the
have a
last
little
three
bit of
days reading
human
some
contact. And one
chapters
of my
from
favorite forms of human
Sideways from
contact
Wayside
is
School.
story time. So
And
I
now we're
thought
getting
that
ready
we
to
could
go
spend some
ahead
time
and
together
read the
reading this
finale, get
very
finished with the
entertaining
whole book.
story. Feel
I'm
free
really
to
just doing
reach
this
out
just so
in
that
the
we have a
chat
chance
um,
to have a little bit of
if you have any
human
questions
contact.
or
And
if
one of my
you
favorite
are
forms of human
curious about
contact is
anything.
story time. So I thought that we could spend some time together
And
reading this very
let's
entertaining story.
let's get
Feel
started.
free to reach out in the chat
All
to
right.
have a little bit of
If you have any
human
questions or if
contact.
you are curious about anything,
So I thought
all
that we
right.
could
Let's first of all let's
spend some
stop the
time
music.
reading this very entertaining story.
This is
Feel
starting.
free to reach out in the chat.
One of my favorite songs, by the way. This is from All God's Children Got Shoes by Sweet Honey in the Rock. It's a very fun song. Not only they have some really great traditional songs, but they also have some new songs. Sweet Honey in the Rock tries to do a rap. I'm sorry, they do a rap, which is interesting and fun. And they also have songs that teach you how to count in different languages like Swahili and Chinese, Japanese, as well as Spanish. So I really encourage you, if you can find that album, All God's Children Got Shoes by Sweet Honey in the Rock. All right. Let's go ahead and let's get ready to read. All right. So this is our book, Louis Sakar's Sideways Stories from Wayside School. We left off at chapter 19 about Miss Zarves. If you remember correctly, chapter 19, Miss Zarves, there is no Miss Zarves. There is no 19th story. Sorry. Okay, so let's get ready for chapter 20 since we're already running a little bit behind schedule. Now, one of the reasons I like this chapter, chapter 20, Cathy, is because I've actually had students like her before. Um, I feel like a Cathy in every classroom. And I'm going to go ahead, we're going to read about her, and you tell me what you think about Cathy. Okay, I'm just tilt down just a little bit here. All right, chapter 20, Cathy. Cathy does not like you. She doesn't even know you. She doesn't know you, but she still doesn't like you. She thinks you are stupid. In fact, she thinks you are the stupidest person she doesn't know. What do you think of that? She also thinks you're ugly. As a matter of fact, she thinks you're the ugliest person that she doesn't know. And she doesn't know a lot of people. She doesn't like She doesn't like the people she knows either. She hates everybody in Mrs. Jewell's class. She did not like one member of the class. She did like one member of the class. She liked Sammy. She liked Sammy. Remember, Sammy was the dead rat, the one that kept insulting everybody and being really mean. He was also pretty smelly. She liked him. She liked Sammy. She thought he was funny. Sammy was a dead rat. But Cathy has good reasons for not liking any of the children she knows. She doesn't like DJ because he smiles too much. And she doesn't like John because he can't stand on his head. And Cathy once had a cat named Skunks. She liked skunks, but she was afraid that skunks would run away. You have nothing to worry about, Cathy, said Mrs. Jules. Skunks won't run away. Just be nice to them and feed him and pet him, and he won't run away. He may go out and play, but he'll always come back. No, you're wrong, Mrs. Jules, said Cathy. What do you know? He'll run away. So Cathy kept Skunks locked up in a closet at home. She never let him out, and sometimes she even forgot to feed him. One day, while Cathy was looking for her other shoe, Skunks ran out of the closet and never came back. You said he would come back, Mrs. Jewell said, Cathy. He never came back. You were wrong. I was right. That's why Cathy didn't like Mrs. Jules. The next time I get a cat, I'll kill him. Then he'll never run away, said Cathy. Yeesh, this kid's intense. Oh my gosh, really? Kill him? Give me a break. There was that time that Damien tried to teach Cathy how to play catch. Damien said, "When I throw the ball, Cathy, try and catch it." "I can't catch it," said Cathy. "I'll just get hurt." "You won't get hurt," Damien insisted. "Just watch the ball." He tossed it to her, but Cathy knew she'd get hurt, so she closed her eyes. The ball hit her on the cheek. It hurt. Cathy began to cry. "You were wrong," she sobbed. "I was right." And that's why Cathy didn't like Damien. Alison believed that if you are nice to someone, then they'll be nice to you. So one day she brought Cathy a cookie. "I don't want your ugly cookie," said Cathy. "It probably tastes terrible." Alison said, "No, it is very good. I made it myself." Cathy said, "If you made it, then it must stink. You can't cook, and you're stupid." She just put the cookie in her desk along with her pencils, crayons, and books. 3 weeks later, Cathy was hungry. "All right, Alison," she said. "I'll try your stupid cookie." She took it out of her desk, and it was covered with dust. She bit it. It was hard and tasted terrible. "See," said Cathy, "I was right." And that's why Cathy didn't like Alison. Yes, Cathy had a good reason for not liking anybody she knew. But she also has a good reason for not liking you. And she doesn't even know you. Her reason is this. She knows that if you ever met her, you wouldn't like her. You don't like Cathy, do you? See? She was right. It's funny how a person can be right all the time and still be wrong. So is that true? Do you like Cathy? Do you think Cathy's a cool person? Is Cathy a person you would like to hang out with and be friends with? What do you think? All right. All right. I hope that people are hearing me okay. I know that I have a viewer. I'm getting some error messages over on this end. So at the very least, hopefully, we're just recording for later. Maybe people will be able to see the stream later. Chapter 21, Ron. Chapter 21, Ron. Ron had curly hair and little feet. "I want to play kickball," he said. "You can't play," said Terrance. "Get out of here," said Dee. "Scram," said Jason. "I want to play kickball," said Ron. "Well, you're not playing," said Terrance. "Beat it." Ron stomped across the playground to the hopscotch area. Ginny was playing hopscotch with Lewis. Ginny was on 9. Lewis was still on 4, but it was his turn. "I want to play kickball," Ron said. "So go play kickball," said Lewis. "Terrance won't let me play," said Ron. Lewis walked with Ron to the kickball field. "Hey, what about our hopscotch game?" Ginny asked. "You won," said Lewis. "I just beat Lewis in hopscotch," Ginny announced. Leslie, Ronnie, and Alison flocked around her. "Hey, Lewis," Damien shouted. "Do you want to play kickball?" "All right," said Lewis. "Ron and I will both play." "No," said Terrance. "Ron isn't playing." "Anyone who wants to play can play," said Lewis. "No, he can't," said Terrance. "It's my ball." "It isn't your ball," said Lewis. "You gave it to me," said Terrance. "I gave it to you to share," said Lewis. "If you can't share it, you can't have it." "Oh, all right," said Terrance. "But I get to pitch." "Ron and I will stand everybody," Lewis announced. "All right," said Jason. "We'll kill them." "We'll murder them," said Dee. "We'll smash them," said Myron. "We'll see," said Lewis. Ron pitched and Lewis played the other 8 positions. 20 minutes later, they finally got 3 outs. The score was 21-0. Ron was up first. "Infiled in," shouted Damien. Everybody stood within 10 feet of home plate. "All right, Ron," Lewis shouted. "Kick it over their heads." Ron kicked the ball only 3.5 feet. That's it. Just 3 8.5 feet. Ty picked it up and threw him out. Lewis was up. Everybody ran back to the edge of the outfield. Still, Lewis kicked the ball over their heads for a home run. Everybody ran all the way back in again for Ron's up. He kicked the ball only 2 feet. Dee tagged him out. Lewis kicked another home run. Ron then kicked the ball a foot and tripped over it on his way to first base. 3 outs. Ron and Lewis held the other team to only 5 runs the next inning, and that was because the bell rang and lunch was finally over. Lewis and Ron lost 26-2. Ron had a wonderful time. The next day, Ron said, "I want to play kickball." "You can't play," said Terrance. "Get out of here," said Jason. "Scram," said Dee. "I want to play kickball," Ron said to Lewis. Lewis walked with him to the kickball field. "Ron and I will stand all of you." Everybody liked the teams. Ron pitched while Lewis played the other 8 positions. They lost 57-2. After the game, Lewis took Ron aside. "Listen, Ron," he said, "why do you always want to play kickball? You can't kick, you can't field, you can't even run to first base. You just get smashed every time." "Hey now, wait a second," said Ron. "Don't go blaming it all on me. You're half the team too, you know." And with that, he punched Lewis in the stomach. And he punched a heck of a lot harder than he kicked. All right. Let's see here. Let's have a look. That's Ron punching Lewis in the stomach. I got a question. Lewis is the yard teacher, right? And for those of you who may not have, a lot of recess at your school, the yard teacher is pretty much the teacher whose job it is to watch the kids during recess. It's his job to make sure all the balls are put away and the playground is cleaned up after the kids finish playing. Why is he wearing heeled shoes for this job? I think in another picture he was wearing a blazer. I've never known a yard teacher to dress like that. They always dress pretty comfortably because they have to run a lot and run behind kids. But, books and stuff. Chapter 22, The 3 Erics. I love this chapter. The 3 Erics. In Mrs. Jewell's class, there were 3 children named Eric. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and Eric Ovens. Just one moment. Before we go, I'm just going to take a moment and just send out a quick invite. I'll be honest with you. This is one of my pet peeves of streaming. When people are interacting with people that I can't see. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just sending a quick message out via Facebook to have people join us for the reading today. Let's see here. Post it. Yeah, there we go. Just make sure everybody knows that we're here and we're ready. All right, sorry for the interruption. Back to reading. Chapter 22, The 3 Erics. In Miss Jewell's class, there were 3 children named Eric. There was Eric Fry, Eric Ovens, and Eric Bacon. I'm sorry. In Mrs. Jewell's class, there were 3 children named Eric. There was Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and Eric Ovens. They were known throughout the school for being fat. Eric Fry sat at his end of the room. Eric Bacon sat in the middle of the room, and Eric Ovens sat at that end of the room. There was a joke around Wayside School that if all 3 Erics were ever at the same end of the room at the same time, the whole school would tip over. Eric Bacon hated jokes like that. That's not surprising. After all, he wasn't even fat. In fact, he was the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewell's class, but nobody seemed to notice. The other two Erics were fat, and so everyone just thought that all Erics were fat. But I'm not fat, Eric Bacon insisted. What's your name? Asked Jason. Eric, said Eric Bacon. Then you're fat, Jason concluded. Then, pretty soon, skinny little Eric Bacon, the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewls' class, had the name Fatso. Eric Fry really was fat. He was also the best athlete in Mrs. Jewls' class. His body was solid muscle. However, nobody ever noticed. The other two Erics weren't very good at sports. Eric Ovens was clumsy. Eric Fatso Bacon was a good athlete for his size, but because he was so skinny, he didn't have much power. So naturally, everybody just assumed that Eric Fry was also clumsy and weak. After all, his name was Eric. Whenever the other kids chose up teams, Eric Fry was the last one picked. They never noticed his home runs or the fabulous catches he made. Like all great athletes, he made them possible look easy. Of course, the other kids did notice the one time that he dropped the ball. Eric Fry was playing right field. Terrance belted a deep fly to left. Eric Fry raced all the way across the field after the ball and at the last second dived at it. He caught it in mid-air on his fingertips, but as he hit the ground, the ball squirted loose. Well, what do you expect from Butterfinger, said Stephen. And since that time, Eric Fry had the nickname Butterfingers. Eric Ovens was the nicest person in Mrs. Jewls' class. He treated everyone equally and had always a kind word to say. But because his name was Eric, everyone thought he was mean. Fatso was mean because everyone called him Fatso. Butterfingers was mean because he always had to play right field. So naturally, everyone just assumed that Eric Ovens was also mean. They called him Crabapple. Good morning, Alison, said Eric Ovens. How are you? Lay off, Crabapple, will you? Answered Alison. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. All three of the Erics had nicknames. It was better that way. Otherwise, when somebody said, "Hey, Eric," no one knew to whom he was talking. One time, all the Erics would answer, and the next time, none of them would answer. But when someone said, "Hey, Crabapple," then Eric Ovens knew they were talking to him. And if someone said, "Hey, Butterfingers," then Eric Fry knew that someone meant him. And when someone said, "Hey, Fatso," then Eric Bacon knew that he was being called. That was just like a really sad story. It's just like about three kids who were just being misunderstood. That's pretty sad. Let me let's refresh the stream here, because I've noticed that my face has been frozen for a while now. Okay, I see. All right. Chapter 23, Alison. Alison had pretty blonde hair and always wore a sky blue windbreaker. Her windbreaker was the same color as her eyes. She was best friends with Rondi, and Rondi had blonde hair too, but she was missing her two front teeth. Alison had all of her teeth. Alison used to say that she knocked Rondi's teeth out. Alison was very pretty. So all the boys in Mrs. Jewls' class teased her, especially Jason. But Alison said, "Leave me alone or I'll knock her teeth out like I did Rondi's." Boys didn't bother her after that. One day, Alison brought a tangerine for lunch. She took the peel off in one piece. Mrs. Mush, the lunch teacher, walked up to her. "Alison, may I have your tangerine?" she asked. Miss Mush always gave food to the children, so Alison was happy to give a tangerine to Miss Mush. Miss Mush shoved it in her mouth and swallowed it in less than 4 seconds. Alison left the lunchroom and walked down to the library. The lunchroom was on the 15th story. The library was on the 7th. Alison already had her book. She just went to the library because it was nice and quiet there. The librarian walked up to Alison. "What are you reading?" she asked. Alison told her the name of the book. "That sounds like a good book," said the librarian. "I never read that one. May I borrow it?" The librarian always lent books to the children. Alison was glad to be able to return the favor, so she gave the librarian the book, then walked down the stairs outside to the playground. All of Allison's friends were playing freeze tag. Allison didn't feel like playing. She just reached into her pocket of her sky blue windbreaker and took out a tennis ball. She bounced it a couple times on the ground. Lewis came up to her. "Hi, Allison," he said. "May I play with your tennis ball?" Lewis always gave balls to the children. Allison happily gave her ball to Lewis. Lewis threw the ball all the way to the other side of the playground, and then he went chasing after it. Allison didn't feel like doing anything. Jason ran up and tagged her. "You're frozen," he said. "Get out of here before I knock your teeth out," said Allison. Jason shrugged his shoulders and left. Allison went back inside and up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jewls' room. The lunch period wasn't over yet, but Allison didn't feel like doing anything else. She had given her food to the lunch teacher, her book to the librarian, and her ball to the yard teacher. She went inside of her classroom. Mrs. Jewls was there. "Oh, Allison, I'm glad you're here," said Mrs. Jewls. "I'm having trouble with the arithmetic problem. Maybe you can help." "Sure," said Allison. Mrs. Jewls always helped children with their problems. Allison was happy to help. "How do you spell chair?" asked Mrs. Jewls. "Chair," said Allison. "Yes, that's right," said Mrs. Jewls. "I knew it wasn't Chare, but I couldn't remember what it was." "That's not an arithmetic problem," said Allison. "That's spelling." "Yes, you're right again," said Mrs. Jewls. "I always get the two mixed up." The bell rang. The lunch period wasn't over, and Allison could hear the other children running up the stairs. "Allison," said Mrs. Jewls, "you learned a very important secret today, and I don't want you to tell any of the other children, not even Rondi." "What was that?" asked Allison. She didn't know she had learned a secret. She loved secrets. "You learned that children are really smarter than their teachers," said Mrs. Jewls. "Oh, that's no secret," said Allison. "Everybody knows that." Chapter 24, Damien. What the what? Why are those turtles sleeping on top of each other? And, one's eating a leaf, I guess, of lettuce. All right, let's see. All right, chapter 24, Damien. Damien had hazel eyes with a little black dot in the middle of each of them. The dots were called pupils, and so was Damien. He was a pupil in Mrs. Jewls' class. Dad joke. Mrs. Jewls was about to show the class a movie. She turned out the lights, and when it was dark, Damien's pupils got bigger. By the way, everybody's pupil does that. That way your eyes can take in more light. So whenever the lights go out, your pupils get larger. So right now, I have a light shining right into my face, in which case my pupils have gotten smaller. They've contracted, so it brings in less light. Just a little science tip. "Damien," said Mrs. Jewls, "run downstairs and ask Lewis if he'd like to see the movie with us." Damien ran down the 30 flights of stairs to the playground. He stepped outside as Lewis was hooking up a tetherball. "Hey, Lewis," Damien called, "do you want to see a movie in Mrs. Jewls' class?" Lewis rubbed his chin. "What movie?" he asked. Damien shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know," he said. "I'll be right back." Damien ran all the way back up the stairs to the 30th story. "Lewis wants to know what movie," said Damien. "Does he want to know the name of the movie or what the movie is about?" asked Mrs. Jewls. "I don't know," said Damien. "I'll ask him." And Damien raced back down the stairs and out to the playground. "Lewis, do you want to know the name of the movie or what the movie is about?" he asked. "The name," said Lewis. "Okay," said Damien. And Damien hurried back up the 30 flights of stairs. He took 2 steps at a time. "He wants to know the name," said Damien. "Turtle," said Mrs. Jewls. Damien turned around, took a deep breath, and ran back down the stairs. "Turtles," Damien told Lewis. "Hey, that might be good," said Lewis. "What's it about?" "I'm not sure," said Damien. "I'll find out." And Damien raced back up the stairs. But first, he stopped to drink a drink of water. "What's it about, Mrs. Jewls?" asked Damien. "Turtle," said Mrs. Jewls. Damien rushed back down the stairs to tell Lewis. Turtles, said Damien. No thanks, said Lewis. I don't like turtles. They're too slow. Damien lowered his head and slowly walked back up the 30 flights of stairs. His legs were sore. He could hardly breathe. His side ached. By the time he got to Mrs. Jewls' class, the movie was over. All right, class, said Mrs. Jewls. I want everybody to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and write something about turtles. Damien had missed the movie, but he still could have written something about turtles. Turtles are too slow. But now he couldn't find his pencil. It just wasn't his day. What's the matter, Damien? Asked Mrs. Jewls. I can't find my pencil, said Damien. Class, Damien's pencil is missing, Mrs. Jewls announced. What did it look like, Damien? She asked. It was long and yellow, said Damien. It had a black point at one end and a red eraser at the other. I found it, said Todd. Here, by the blackboard. Yes, that's it, said Damien. No, there it is in the corner by the wastebasket, said Crabapple. Maybe that's it, said Damien. Here it is, said John. It's been in my desk the whole time. No, here it is in my hand, said Joe. I found it, said Rodney. Here it is, said Alison. I have it, laughed DJ. I found it, said Myron. Which one is yours, Damien? Asked Mrs. Jewls. Damien studied each pencil. They all look like mine, he said. Fortunately, at that moment, Lewis walked into the classroom. He handed Damien a pencil. You dropped this when you were telling me about the movie, said Lewis. Thanks, said Damien. Okay, class, said Mrs. Jewls. So that we have no more mix-ups, I want everybody to write his name on his pencil. Damien spent the rest of the day trying to write his name on his pencil. Damien's pencil couldn't write on itself. It was just like his beautiful hazel eyes with the black dots in the middle. They could see everything except themselves. Wonderful. All right. Let's see here for chapter 2. There we go. All right. Chapter 25. Ginny. Ginny came to school on the back of her father's motorcycle. She was late. Wayside School began at 9 o'clock, and it was almost 9:30. She kissed her father goodbye and raced up 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jewls' room. I'm sorry I'm late, Mrs. Jewls, but my father's motorcycle lost a... There was nobody there. The room was empty. Hello? Hello, she cried. Mrs. Jewls? Dana? Todd? Anyone? There was no one in the room. Maybe I'm early, Ginny thought. She looked up at the clock. It was exactly 9:30. Oh, I hope they didn't go on a field trip without me. She looked out the window, and nobody was there, not even Lewis. Ginny didn't know what to do. She sat down at her desk. She watched the second hand go around the clock. I may as well catch up on my spelling, she thought. She opened her desk and took out her speller. M-U-D spells mud. I hope nothing happened to them. B-L-O-O-D spells blood. I hope nothing happened to them. B-L-A-C-K spells black. Ginny heard footsteps coming down the hall. She began to work very fast. H-A-C-K spells hack. S-M-A-C-K spells smack. Someone opened the door. Ginny turned around. Ah! She grasped. He was a man Ginny had never seen before. He had a black mustache and a matching attaché case. All right, so this is wonderful. Notice how these words rhyme. Mud, blood, black, fast, hack, smack, ack. Black, mustache, matching attaché case. That's pretty cool, right? Ginny jumped out of her seat. Get back in your seat, the man said. Ginny slowly sat down. The man walked over and sat down in Dana's seat. Facing Ginny, he opened his attaché case and removed some papers. "What is your name?" he asked her. "Ginny," Ginny whispered. "Ginny?" the man repeated as if he didn't believe her. "Well, it's actually Jennifer. Ginny for short," said Ginny. "I see," said the man. He took the speller from Ginny's desk. Ginny's name was written across the top. He put the speller in his attaché case. "What are you doing here, Jennifer?" he asked. "This is my classroom," said Ginny. "Are you sure?" the man asked. "Yes, I think so. I mean, where's the rest of your class?" the man asked. "I don't know," said Ginny. "Maybe they went on a field trip?" "No," said the man. "They didn't go on a field trip." "Well, I don't know where they are," Ginny cried. "I was half an hour late today, and when I got here, everybody was gone. Really, did something happen to them?" The man didn't answer her. He wrote something on a piece of paper. "Tell me something, Jennifer. When you came to school today and saw that nobody was here, weren't you somewhat puzzled?" Yes, said Ginny. "What happened to them?" "If you are really so concerned and so puzzled," said the man, why did you work on spelling?" "I don't know," said Ginny. "It was seeming to me," the man said, "that if a child came to school and nobody was there, she might play games or walk around or go home, but certainly not work on spelling." Ginny started to cry. "I didn't know what to do. I was late and had to ride on a motorcycle and nobody was here, and now you're asking me all kinds of questions and I'm afraid of what's happened to Dana, Mrs. Jules, and Ronnie and Alison." The man didn't understand a word she said. Ginny heard more footsteps. The man got up and opened the door. 2 more men came in. One had a black mustache like the first man. The other was bald. Ginny was frightened by them. "Does she know?" asked the newcomer with the mustache. "She claims she knows nothing," the first man answered. "She says she was late today. When she got here, everybody was gone." "Do you believe her?" asked the man with the bald head. "I'm not sure. She was working on her speller when I walked in." He reached into his attaché case and took out Ginny's speller. He handed it to the man with the bald head. The bald man read Ginny's name across the top of it. "Tell me, Ginny," he said, "why are you the only one here?" "I don't know," said Ginny. "Has this ever happened before?" he asked. "No, never," said Ginny. He gave Ginny her speller. "Put this inside of your desk." Ginny put it away. "I'm satisfied," said the man with the bald head. "Okay, Jennifer," said the first man. "You may go now." Ginny got out of her seat. "Ginny," the bald man called. Ginny turned around slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "Next time, don't come to school on a Saturday." That was great. That was so cool, right? It's like a big mystery as to what's going on. She came to school on a Saturday. Have you ever done that? Have you ever gotten up and thought you had to get ready for school and it turned out it was like really like the weekend? It was like a Saturday or a Sunday, and or you had like a holiday for that day. So you get up and start getting ready for school only to find out there's no school. It's pretty cool, right? Of course, that's not assuming that you're not really looking forward to going to school. All right, I don't know why the chat is not working right now. I think my streaming is good. It's telling me I have an excellent connection. It's just for some reason the chat is off. So I am hoping that everybody's getting to see everything okay. And we're going to go on to chapter 26, Terrance. Oh my gosh, this guy right here, Terrance. Oh my gosh. All right, Terrance. Terrance was a good athlete, but a bad sport. Ronnie and Alison were playing 2-square with a red ball. "Can I play?" "No," Alison replied. "You have to let me play," Terrance said. "Lewis says we have to share balls." "Well, we're not sharing with you," said Alison. "Oh, let him play," said Ronnie. "All right," said Alison. "We'll play 3-square, but you better play right." "I will," said Terrance. Alison bounced the ball to Ronnie. Ronnie bounced it over to Terrance. Terrance caught it and kicked it over the fence. "You have to go get it," said Alison. "Shut up, Dixie Cup," Terrance answered. Ronnie ran and told Lewis. DJ and Damien were playing basketball. Uh-oh, here comes Terrance, said Damien. Hey, let me play, said Terrance. Get lost, Terrance, said Damien. You have to share the balls. Lewis says so, said Terrance. Okay, but just throw it in the basket. Don't kick it, said Damien. I won't, said Terrance. First, Damien took a shot, and it bounced off the backboard through the hoop. Next, DJ took a shot. He threw it underhand way up in the air, and it came down right through the hoop without touching the rim. Then Terrance took a shot. He kicked it over the fence. You idiot, said Damien. Take a train, peanut brain, Terrance answered. DJ went and told Lewis. Stephen, Calvin, Joe, John, and Leslie were playing Spud. Stephen was it. Everyone else had a number. Stephen had to throw the ball up in the air and call out a number. The person who had that number had to try and catch it. Can I play, asked Terrance. No, said Calvin. You just kick the ball over the fence. No, said Joe. No way, said John. No, said Leslie. Sure, said Stephen. Newcomers are it. He gave the ball to Terrance. Just throw the ball up in the air, call out a number between 1 and 5. Okay, said Terrance. The children formed a circle around Terrance. 1,000,000, yelled Terrance, and he kicked the ball over the fence. What did you do that for? Asked Stephen. Eat a frog, warthog, said Terrance. Stephen ran and told Lewis. Terrance looked around, and there was nothing to do. There were no balls left. Lewis walked up to him. He was followed by Alison, Ronnie, Damien, DJ, Stephen, Calvin, Joe, John, and Leslie. What's the matter, Terrance? Asked Lewis. There are no balls, said Terrance. Do you have a green ball? No, said Lewis. All of my balls have mysteriously disappeared. Darn it, said Terrance. There's nothing left to kick. Nothing left to kick? Asked Lewis. Oh, I don't know about that. What do you think, Rondé? Is there anything left to kick? Ronnie thought a minute. Then she smiled. She was missing her 2 front teeth. Yes, there's something left to kick, she said. Well, where is it? Asked Terrance. Let me check with Alison, said Lewis. Alison, is there anything left to kick? He winked at her. There sure is, said Alison. What? What? Asked Terrance. What about you, Damien? Asked Lewis. Can you think of anything? Damien nodded his head yes. Well, what is it? Asked Terrance. He couldn't wait. DJ, we got anything around here to kick? Asked Lewis. DJ smiled. Yes, we do, he said. Give it to me! Give it to me, Terrance demanded. I don't know if I should, said Lewis. What do you think, Calvin? Should I give it to him? I think you should, said Calvin. You heard, Calvin, said Terrance. Give it to me! Not so fast, said Lewis. Leslie, should I give it to him? Oh, yes, I think he deserves it, said Leslie. Give it to me! Give it to me, Terrance repeated. Do you think he deserves it, Joe? Asked Lewis. Yes, I think so, said Joe. What about you, John? Asked Lewis. Definitely give it to him, John answered. Come on, said Terrance. Recess is almost over. We'll leave it up to Stephen, said Lewis. Whatever he says goes. Let him have it, said Stephen. You heard him, Lewis, said Terrance. Let me have it. Okay, said Lewis. And he picked Terrance up and kicked him over the fence. There he is, going over the fence. Yes, and just in case any teachers are listening right now, it is not okay to kick your students over the fence. Just, you may want to, but don't do it. It's wrong. All right. Chapter 27. Joy. Joy. Joy had forgotten her lunch at home. It was lunchtime, and she was hungry. She didn't have a meal ticket. If she had had a meal ticket, she could have had lunch from Miss Mush, the lunch teacher. She'd have to be terribly hungry to eat lunch made by Miss Mush. Even that empty brown paper sack would taste better, but that's how hungry Joy was. Damien had forgotten his lunch. He had brought a lovely turkey sandwich with a big piece of chocolate cake and a crisp red apple. All he needed was a glass of milk. He could get that from Miss Mush. Miss Mush didn't know how to ruin milk. Damien left his lunch on his desk and went to the end of the milk line. Joy didn't waste any time. She reached into Damien's sack, took out an apple, but then she spotted the turkey sandwich. She put back the apple and took the sandwich and noticed a chocolate cake. She put back the sandwich and took the cake. But then Joy had second thoughts. She put back the cake and grabbed Damien's whole lunch. First, she ate the sandwich. It was in a baggie. When she finished the sandwich, she placed the baggie on Jason's desk. Next, she ate the chocolate cake. It was wrapped in wax paper. She put the wax paper on Alison's desk. She ate the apple last. She placed the apple core on Dee Dee's desk. Then she put the empty sack on Calvin's desk. Damien returned with his glass of milk. "Mrs. Jules, my lunch is gone," he called. "I wonder, where could it be?" said Mrs. Jules. "Calvin took it," said Joy. "There's an empty sack on his desk." "Good work, Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "Calvin, I'm ashamed of you." She wrote Calvin's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. "Look, the baggie from Damien's turkey sandwich is on Jason's desk," Joy called. "Very good, Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "But how did you know that Damien had a turkey sandwich?" "I'm just smart," said Joy. Mrs. Jules wrote Jason's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Wrote Jason's name on the blackboard under Calvin's. "And here's the wax paper from the delicious chocolate cake on Alison's desk," Joy announced. Joy had chocolate all around her lips. Alison stood firm. She looked into Mrs. Jules' eyes. "I didn't eat his cake," she said. "The evidence is there on your desk," said Mrs. Jules. "Joy spotted it." She wrote Alison's name under Jason's. "Damien's apple core is on Dee Dee's desk," said Joy. "Very good, Joy," said Mrs. Jules. She wrote Dee Dee's name under Alison's. "Damien, I think you ought to thank Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "She solved the mystery." "Thank you, Joy," said Damien. Just then, Louis the yard teacher walked in. "I have your lunch, Joyce," he said. "Your mother brought it. You left it at home." "You mean you didn't have a lunch?" asked Mrs. Jules. "You must be very hungry." "No," said Joy, "not really. Since Damien didn't get to eat, he can have it." "Thanks a lot," said Damien. "You're the greatest." He ate Joy's lunch, an old bologna sandwich and a dried up carrot. "Joy, for being such a good detective and for being so generous with your lunch, you may help yourself to a Tootsie Roll Pop," said Mrs. Jules. "They're in the coffee can on top of my desk." Joy took one, and then when Mrs. Jules wasn't looking, she took another. Calvin, Jason, Alison, and Dee Dee had their names on the blackboard under the word discipline. But they were good the rest of the day, so at 2 o'clock, Mrs. Jules erased them. They forgot all about the whole thing. Damien had a lousy lunch instead of a great lunch, but 5 minutes later, it didn't make any difference. He couldn't taste it anymore. He was full. He went outside to play basketball and forgot about the whole thing. Joy had a great lunch and 2 Tootsie Roll Pops, but 5 minutes later, it didn't make any difference. She couldn't taste it anymore, and she was full. And at dinner time, she was hungry just the same. But a horrible thing happened. Joy couldn't forget about filching Damien's lunch. And for the rest of the year, every turkey sandwich, piece of chocolate cake, apple, or Tootsie Roll Pop tasted like Miss Mush's porridge. Wow. That's what I call justice, right? It seemed like she was about to get away with it, and then that happened. Why do you think that everything tasted like Mrs. Mush's porridge from that point on? What do you think happened in the story to change the way that Joy tasted food? Just send me a comment. Let me know if you can. All right. Next, let's go down to, let's see here. Chapter 28. We're almost done. Only a few more chapters left. Nancy. Nancy had big hands and big feet. He didn't like his name. He thought it was a girl's name. None of the other children in Mrs. Jules' class thought that Nancy's name was odd. They didn't think of it as a girl's name or a boy's name. Nancy was just the name of the quiet kid with the big hands and feet who sat over there in the corner next to John. Nancy was very quiet and shy. He was ashamed of his name. He had only one friend, a girl who went to class on the 23rd floor of Wayside School. They were friends for a good reason. He didn't know her name, and she didn't know his. They just called each other, "Hey you," or just plain you. Nancy was afraid to ask his friend what her name was because he might have to tell her his name. He never could figure out why she never asked, but he was happy just to leave well enough alone. One morning, Nancy and his friend were late. When they got to the 23rd story, his friend's teacher was waiting inside. "Hurry up, you're late, Mac," said the teacher. Nancy's friend turned red. She didn't move. "Come on, Mac, shake the leg. Get the lead out," said the teacher. "Your name is Mac," said Nancy. Mac was very pretty. She had red hair and freckles. She covered her face and ran into the room. "My name is Nancy," Nancy called after her. Mac stepped back outside. "I was ashamed to tell you my name," she said. "Me too," said Nancy. "Nancy's a girl's name." "Oh, I think it's cute," said Mac. "I like the name Mac," said Nancy. "Mac is a boy's name," said Mac. "My mother has a rich aunt named Nancy," said Nancy. "That's why she gave me the name." "My mother once had a dog named Mac," said Mac. "Hey, do you want to trade?" Nancy asked. "Can we?" asked Mac. "I don't see why not," said Nancy. "Okay," said Mac. They both spun around 100 times in opposite directions until they were so dizzy that they fell over. When they stood up, Mac was Nancy and Nancy was Mac. They said goodbye. Then Mac raced up to Mrs. Jewls' room. He was no longer shy. "Hi, everybody. My name is Mac," he announced. "I traded names," and he held out his big hand. Todd jumped up and shook it. "Hi, Mac. Glad to meet you." "How you doing, Mac?" said Ron. "Howdy, Mac," said Terrance. "Nice to meet you, Mac," said BB. You traded names?" asked Jason. Jason didn't like his name either. "That's right, Jason, old boy," said Mac. "Is that allowed?" asked Jason. "Why not?" said Mac. "Hey, everybody. Hey, anybody want to trade?" Jason called. "I'll trade with you," said Terrance. He didn't like his name either. "Wait, I'll trade with you," Terrance said Mauricia. Mauricia didn't like her name. "No, he's trading with me," said Jason. "I'll trade with you," Mauricia said Damien. "No, thanks," said Mauricia. "I'll trade with you," Damien said Mrs. Jewls. "No, I want to be Mrs. Jewls," said Stephen. It turned out that nobody in Mrs. Jewls' class liked their name. The children all spun around in different directions until they got so dizzy that they fell over. And when they stood up again, nobody knew who anybody was. "What are we going to do, Mrs. Jewls?" asked Leslie, who was really Eric Bacon. "My name is not Mrs. Jewls," said Marcia, answered Terrance, who was really Jason. "It is not. I'm Marcia," said Dee Dee, who was really Joe. "You're both wrong," said Marcia. "I'm Mrs. Jewls." This went on for an hour. At last, he figured out who the real Ronnie was. She was missing her 2 front teeth. After they figured out Ronnie, they were able to get Alison pretty easily, and then from there, they got DJ, Damien, and Mrs. Jewls. She was the oldest one. Eventually, they figured out who everybody really was, and they had some difficulty deciding which Eric was which, and actually, they're all still not absolutely sure. Everybody decided to keep his own name. The children didn't like them, but it made things much easier. Mac and Nancy kept their new names, but when they were together, they still called each other "Hey you," or just plain you. Awesome. Wow, do you ever have do you have a name that you don't like? Do you like your name? My name was very long and difficult to pronounce, and for a period of time, I did not like my name. I thought I just wanted to have like a regular, ordinary name, and now I am so glad I don't have a regular, ordinary name. I like having a unique or special name. What about you? How do you feel about your name? Would you like to change it? If you could change it, what would you change it to? We're almost done, boys and girls. And that's a ghost. This is suddenly becoming a ghost story. Chapter 29. Stephen. Stephen had green hair. He had purple ears and a blue face. He wore sister's pink dancing shoes and green leotards. The leotards matched his hair. He was all dressed up as a goblin for Mrs. Jewls' Halloween party. But unfortunately, it wasn't Halloween. Ha ha ha, you look stupid, said Jason. Jason was Stephen's best friend. So do you, said Stephen. Boy, are you dumb, said Ginny. Halloween is on Sunday. Today's only Friday. You're the one who's dumb, said Stephen. Ha ha, you'd probably come to school on Sunday, You'd probably come to school on Sunday. Mrs. Jewls said we could have the party today. But none of the other children wore costumes, only Stephen. All right, class, said Mrs. Jewls. It's time for a Halloween party. See, said Stephen. Mrs. Jewls gave each child a cookie that looked like an orange witch with a black hat. She laughed when she saw Stephen and forgot to give him one. Stephen didn't ask for it. He was afraid that she'd laugh again. The children finished their cookies in less than 30 seconds. All right, class, said Mrs. Jewls. The party's over. We have a lot of work to do. Stephen felt like a fool. The party lasted less than a minute, and he had to spend the rest of the day wearing his stupid goblin suit. Look, Stephen's wearing his sister's leotards, laughed Dana. They're green, just like his hair, said Fatso. Everybody laughed. Mrs. Jewls began the arithmetic lesson. She wrote on the blackboard, 2 plus 2 equals 5. That's wrong, Joy shouted. Mrs. Jewls tried again. 2 plus 2 equals 3. That wasn't right either. She added 2 and 2 again and got 43. It was useless. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get 2 plus 2 to equal 4. I don't understand, she said. They've always equaled 4 before. Suddenly she screamed. The chalk turned into a squiggling worm. She dropped it on her foot. Then all the lights went out, and the blackboard lit up like a movie screen. And a woman appeared on the screen. She had a long tongue and pointed ears. She stepped off the screen into the classroom. It was the ghost of Mrs. Gorf. Mrs. Gorf ran her fingernails across the blackboard. Trick or treat, you rotten kid, she said. Now I'll get even with every last one of you. Where's Todd? Who is that? Asked Mrs. Jewls. Mrs. Gorf, said Damien. Who's Mrs. Gorf? Asked Mrs. Jewls. She's the meanest teacher we ever had, said Rondi. What happened to her? Asked Mrs. Jewls. Louis ate her, said Jason. Well, I'm not going to allow this, said Mrs. Jewls. Get out of my classroom, she demanded. It's Halloween, sweet teacher, said Mrs. Gorf. Ghosts can go anywhere they like. I've come for a little class reunion. But it isn't Halloween, said Mrs. Jewls. Halloween is still 2 days away. I know, said Mrs. Gorf, but Halloween falls on a Sunday this year, so we're celebrating it on Friday before. Stephen leaped from his seat. See, I was right, he said. Today's the day we celebrate it. The Friday before. Mrs. Gorf proved it. He ran up to Mrs. Gorf. They all laughed at me and made me feel stupid because I was the only one who got dressed up, but they were the ones who were wrong. You and I are right. He put his arms around Mrs. Gorf and hugged her. Mrs. Gorf gasped and disappeared. The lights came back on. Mrs. Jewls picked up the piece of chalk from the floor. She wrote on the blackboard, 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's good, she said. When 2 and 2 doesn't equal 4, anything can happen. All the children who had laughed at Stephen now called him a hero. They told him to change out of his stupid costume. So at lunch, Stephen went home, washed up, and changed. He came back wearing blue jeans, a polo shirt, and of course his hair was still green. It always was. All right, guys. We've come to the end of our journey. Chapter 30, Louis. Louis had a red face and a mustache of many colors. He was a yard teacher at Wayside School. It was his job to see that the children didn't have too much fun during lunch and recess. If you haven't already guessed, he was the one who wrote this book. On June 10th, there was a blizzard, and Louis was afraid the children would have too much fun, so nobody was allowed outside. Class, said Mrs. Jewls, after you finish your lunch today, come back up to the classroom. You're not allowed outside. The children all went to the lunchroom. Miss Mush made tuna surprise. They looked at it and then hurried back upstairs. There was nothing to do. Now, class, said Mrs. Jules, I know that you're all bored, but I have a special surprise for you. I hope it's better than tuna surprise, said Mauricia. Mrs. Jules continued, Louis is going to come up and entertain us. He will tell us a story. Now I want you all to be on your best behavior. When Louis walked in, all the children booed. Are you going to tell us a story? Asked BB. Yes, said Louis. Well, it better be good, BB warned. It better be better than tuna surprise, said Butterfingers. I thought the tuna surprise was good, said Louis. You eat dirt if they put enough ketchup on it, said Mac. Hey, everybody, be quiet, said Todd. Let him tell the story. Not too loud, Louis, said Sherry. I'm trying to get some sleep. Louis sat in the middle of the room, and all the children gathered around. Louis began his story. This is a story about a school, very much like this one. Before we get started, there's something you ought to know so that you don't get confused. In this school, every classroom is on the same story. Which one? The 18th? Asked Ginny. No, said Louis. They're all on the ground. The school is only one story high. Not much of a school, laughed Damien. Louis continued. Now, you might think the children there are strange and silly. That is probably true. However, when I told them stories about you, they thought that you were strange and silly. Us? The children answered. How are we strange? I'm normal, said Stephen. Aren't I? As normal as I am, Joe assured him. The children at that school must be crazy, said Leslie. Real Lulus, Marcia agreed. Tell us about them, Louis, BB demanded. For one thing, Louis said, none of these children has ever been turned into an apple. That's silly, said Dee Dee. Everybody's been turned into an apple. It's part of growing up. Louis continued. And dead rats don't walk in the classroom wearing raincoats. Well, what do they wear? Tuxedos, said Todd. And girls never try to sell their toes, Louis added. Well, no wonder, said Leslie, at today's prices. Louis continued. They don't trade their names or read upside down. They can't turn mosquito bites into numbers. They don't count the hairs on their heads. The walls don't laugh. And 2 + 2 always equals 4. How horrible, said Damien. Oh, that's not the worst of it, said Louis. They've never tasted Marcia-flavored ice cream. A hush fell over the room. Mrs. Jules, I'm scared, said Alison. Is there really a school like that? Of course not, said Mrs. Jules. Louis is just telling a story. It was a very good story, said Leslie. I thought it was stupid, said Cathy. I liked it, said Rondi. It was funny. Mrs. Jules said, Louis is that was a very entertaining story. But we don't really go in for fairy tales here. I'm trying to teach my class the truth. That's all right, said Louis. I have to go down to room 29 now and tell them a story. He started out the door. Class, said Mrs. Jules, let's all thank Louis for a story. Everybody booed. That was the end. Here's a final note about the author. When Louis Sachar was going to school, teachers always pronounced his name wrong. Now that he's become a popular author of children's books, teachers all over the country are pronouncing his name wrong. It should be said Sacker, like someone who tackles quarterbacks and stuffs potatoes in the sacks. Mr. Sacker, who is a lawyer, now writes for children full time. He lives in Austin, Texas with his wife and their daughter. Wow. Okay, well, that was the end of the story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I am streaming this on my YouTube channel. So if you missed part of today's reading, in probably an hour, you'll be able to go back and watch the whole reading from scratch. Or you can watch all three and listen to me read the entire book. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Let me know in the comments if there's a story that you would like me to read next. In the meantime, I want you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. And goodbye. See you later. Oh, wait. I'm supposed to be like an hour. I have 20 seconds to burn. So, yeah. So, oh gosh, I dropped my microphone. There we go. There it's back up. Oh, yeah, I got an idea. Hey, look what I can do. My head hurts. I'm I'm not going to do that anymore. Bye.